Cap, what is going on a Friday?
Morning, John. Oh, life is good. How are you doing?
Try to look like I know what I'm talking about. I actually had to go back and listen to last week's segment with Greg because he specifically wanted me to discuss topics with you, and obviously, we'll get into that coming up in just a little bit. But end of the regular season for Atlanta United, obviously disappointing across the board. So we'll start here.
Yeah.
Your takeaways from decision day and the season in general. Like I said, obviously there's a standard that the fans have, the team has, but this season there's no postseason. So what are your takeaways from 30,000 feet?
Yeah, I was at the game on Sunday. It was good to be back in the stadium. The crowd was amazing as always. Incredible support. But yeah, so disappointing, obviously, to mean nothing, as far as standings and playoffs go. Yeah, for sure. The first group that was there set the tone of expectations. The ownership set expectations as far as money being spent, facilities, transfer fees, willing to put money into the team to have success. And that hasn't always been the case in MLS. And when ownership does that, you obviously an expectation comes with that. And you want to be in the playoffs and expect to be there every year. And that's the minimum, right? Making the playoffs is the minimum. So the fact that it's 2 out of 3 years not even reaching minimum is not good, of course. And everyone in the club knows that. Everyone's aware of it. But obviously a lot of things need to change. Things need to happen. It's not acceptable, and everyone knows that. So, there's a big offseason coming up for Atlanta United. Obviously at the very top, needing a new president, and that person needs to set the tone for what's going to happen here in the near future. And, from there, it's what do you do with the number 9 position and go from there.
When it comes to the last game of the season, and I guess this is where we can kind of start to steer the mentoring conversation, there's always that chance that someone somewhere is watching. And in a game like Atlanta United had in game 34, where you're just out there for 90 minutes, you've still got to give 100% because you never know, A, what your future is, B, where your future could be, and C, what it could look like. And so it's not just something, and you get found out very quickly if you don't give 100% in those kinds of situations. Like I said, I'm not talking about anything that we saw with Atlanta United at all in that last match. I'm just saying that those last matches where there is nothing on the line are still opportunities, and that's another message that you can give to your mentees down the line.
Oh, definitely. Just because the game doesn't mean anything as far as standings doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything. Absolutely. Every opportunity to go out there and play is an opportunity to further your development. And like you said, looking at it individually and selfishly, it's an opportunity for you to showcase yourself, not only in front of your own coaching staff, but the team you're playing against, the fans, anyone that's watching the game. And so, yeah, it's an opportunity, and you don't want to take opportunities for granted. You never know. You never know when it's going to end, right? It could be the last game of somebody's career out on that field, last Sunday. Hopefully not, but maybe, so that's why I think you see sometimes in all sports, right? You see these teams that have nothing to play for beat a team that's fighting for a playoff spot. And you think, how is that even possible? Well, these guys are still fighting for contracts. They're fighting for next year, whether they're going to be on that team or a different team. So there's still a lot to play for. And every single game is an opportunity for sure. And just an opportunity to have fun, right? Play the game that we all love.
How much of a reminder is that sometimes that, yes, it's your job on the professional level. Yes, you're out there, making a paycheck, making your living, but at the same time, it's about having fun. Do we lose that, do you think, sometimes when it comes to those kinds of moments? Do we lose that idea about it still being fun sometimes, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we as a society lose that too. For sure at the youth level, but even at the professional level, I think that even I was watching, for example, I was watching the Major League Baseball playoffs last night, and it's an intense game. I was watching Seattle, Houston, and the Seattle guy hit like a liner to the outfield, and the guy made a great play, and the player that hit the ball had rounded first, and as the other guys were running into the dugout because the inning was over, he kind of had a laugh with the shortstop on the other team. They obviously know each other from off the field stuff. And so many fans take that as this guy doesn't care, because, how can you be friendly with somebody on the other team, having a laugh in the middle of a game? And, I understand that from a fan perspective, because you think, oh, you can't be smiling and having fun while also being at the very top of your game. But I disagree. I think anyone that's played knows that you play better when you're having fun, right? You have fun when you're confident, and that leads to better performances. So absolutely, it's important that we never lose sight of, you have to go out there and enjoy yourself first. And by doing so, it will more likely lead to success.
Well, and at the same time, you mentioned that kind of a moment in a playoff game, but if in any game that we're looking at, whether we're involved emotionally or we're participating or whatever, sometimes you just have to tip your cap to somebody and sit there. It's like, yeah, you got me that time. It's no matter what you do, sometimes there are things that are out of your control, and if someone comes up with an absolute gem of a play, you just sit there and you tip your hat and you move on, because there isn't a whole lot you could do.
Definitely. And I think we saw that the second to last game of the season, where the Revolution, I think I saw some of the guys kind of like clap Joseph for that goal that he scored, because, yeah, what can you do? I mean, surely I guess someone could have been tighter to him, but, outside of that, like once he's in that spot and it's just him and the ball and contact and stuff, like there's no stopping that. The goalie's not going to stop it. Nobody can make a play. Like, so you tip your cat and say, hey, shoot, man, like,
Yeah.
bravo.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all, and at the same time, I think that having fun can lead itself into that idea of leading by action and example, because you can get so locked into an idea of, I'm here, this is my job, I have to do things a certain way, that's how I'm supposed to lead. But then you have a moment like that. I think that there's just as much value of leading by example to show the looser side of yourself and your personalities, instead of just being locked in like some drill instructor sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that some guys are scared to do that. I think that, and that's because there's still a lot of people that misinterpret it. They misinterpret smiling and being loose as not caring and not being focused. And there are guys that can't smile and have fun and be serious, right? We're not talking about like goofing around. There's a difference between goofing around and having a smile on your face because you love soccer and you're enjoying it. And for some people, there's that a very fine line, or the line doesn't exist. So I think some guys are afraid to show themselves having fun because they don't want others to assume that they're not taking it seriously or trying their hardest, especially if things don't go well, right? If they don't play particularly well, or the team's not doing well. So that goes into it a little bit as well.
But I think at the same time, you can be confident. And we got into last week with Greg the differences between confidence and cockiness, and how it is a very, very fine line. But I think that you can be confident in your game, confident in yourself, but still have that joy about you when it comes to what you can and can't do out there, specifically on a soccer pitch.
Definitely. And the Brazilians have showed us that, right? The Brazilians typically, for a long time, have been one of the best, if not the best country as far as producing talent and national team. And they were like the first ones. I remember those Nike commercials back in the day, and they're just goofing around, having fun. I mean, Ronaldinho played with a smile on his face all the time, right? I mean, even today, Gabriel Jesus, right? People are on him about dancing after goals, right? I mean, that's having fun, right? Having fun while you're playing a game and doing it at a really high level at the same time, by the way.
When do you think there was a point where that line got crossed, where folks sit there and they lock into this notion of you've got to be serious? It's unacceptable if you don't show seriousness. Was there a point, do you think, where we crossed that line instead of, like you mentioned with Ronaldinho and the television ads, where you see the fun? Did we cross a line somewhere and sit there and say it's unacceptable to have fun and have people, shake their index fingers at you? Or was it just something that you think evolved over time?
I think we're still trying to cross that line today into having the fun. I think the old school mentality was like, hey, you need to be serious about this. No laughing, no goofing around, like a drill sergeant type thing. Where I think the newer, younger players sometimes are able to express themselves and celebrate and have fun. And it does lead to that fine line, like you and Greg talked about. But we talk about like what comes first, like having fun and confidence or playing well, right? Playing well leads you to having confidence, and having confidence leads to having fun, right? But if you don't have confidence, right, how do you develop it, right? And sometimes is like, remember to have fun, right? Go out there and have fun and enjoy yourself. And then you're looser. And when you're looser, you tend to make less mistakes or be worried about making mistakes. So that leads to you playing better, and that leads to having more confidence. And it's a circle.
So since we're talking shapes, since you went circle, I'll go curve. Greg wanted me to carry on this topic with you this week about the mental curve and the highs and lows about it. When you are discussing things with your mentees and you mentioned the mental curve, for those of us who are not there with your mentees and in your meetings, when you mean the mental curve, what are you talking about?
We're talking about the highs and lows of life, of a game. It could be a game, it could be a week, it could be a year, right? We'll take, for instance, a season, right? You've got your highs and lows of a season. Really good wins, big wins, or even individually, right? Really good games. You score a hat trick, feel really good. And then you've got your low points, of course, when you play terribly, give up goals that you shouldn't, lose a big game, right? And the idea of the mental curve is to show emotions and have emotions, because emotions are important, but we're not striving to be at the top of the mountain. Right? We are not striving for perfection. We don't want to be way on top of the mountain. There's a point in between the baseline of like, everything's just fine, and the top of the mountain that you want to live in when things are good, right? You want to celebrate things. You want to be happy. It's tough to win games, right? It takes a lot of work. It's tough to do well on tests and do well, in school, right? So you want to celebrate and be happy for yourself because you put in a lot of work, but we want to do that without getting on top of the mountain. And the reason is because usually when you're on top of the mountain, feeling invincible on cloud nine, when things go poorly, you're way more likely to hit the roller coaster all the way down to the valley and hit bottom. And that's a bad place to be, because then you've got no confidence. It's tough to get out of the valley when you're in the valley. And it's a bad state to always be going from valley to mountain to valley to mountain versus staying somewhere near that baseline, whether things are good or bad. So that's kind of the mental curve, like keeping that curve closer to the baseline, enjoying things, being disappointed. Of course, we're upset, we're sad at some moments, right? But we understand that this is momentarily. This position, we can get ourselves out of it. We will get ourselves out of it quickly. And by focusing on the next play, the next game, the next situation, the next test, whatever it is, just working harder, that type of thing, versus like being in that valley. So less of massive roller coasters and more just mini roller coasters.
So then let me ask you this, as we're continuing the analogy here, is there anything, you mentioned the highs and lows. I would imagine also there should be an understanding, an internal understanding, that it might be okay to go to the peak, take a look, maybe take a picture, enjoy the view, but understand that you've got a lot more earth underneath you if you end up heading down that other side that you're talking about, like heading into that valley. There's nothing wrong with enjoying that peak for a second, but the fact that you can't live there, I think, is probably what's just as important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that's part of controlling emotions, right? And, not everyone is going to be amazing at controlling their emotions, right? When things go well, some people get super, super excited, and that's okay, right? To get excited. But when you're at that point, can you realize where you are emotionally, right? Realize, okay, I'm on top of the mountain right now. Like, this is awesome. I'm super excited about whatever just happened to lead me to get to where I am right now. But okay, I've enjoyed it. Now let me get back a little bit closer to the level playing field so that I can focus on the next task, the next game, the next training session, the next test, whatever it is.
How long did it take you to learn to control your emotions and hang out where you can still see the peak and still see the valley? How long did it take you to sit there and it's like, I can kind of live here in this house that's right here that I can drive to, and I've got a driveway for. The road might be a little rocky, but I enjoy the view that I have here. How long did it take you to control your emotions to get into that midsection?
I think it's always a work in progress all the time, because sometimes you're influenced by some of the people around you. And so, for me, I was always pretty emotionally level. But I think that for me, it wasn't so much of being on cloud nine that I needed to work on. It was more towards the bottom when things going poorly, right? Not being in the valley. But I even as a pro, even at Atlanta United, I played with guys that were on that roller coaster. Like, every win was, amazing, and every loss was, holy smokes, we're terrible. It's, we need to change. Things need to change, even in the game, right? Atlanta United, in our history, and even when I was playing there, was never really good at coming back in a game, right? From being in a losing position. And I think some of that has got to do with some of the mentality of players of, like, the roller coaster, right? When things go bad, you give up a goal. And when I was playing for Atlanta United, it was like that. It was like we gave up a goal, and if we didn't get that goal back quickly, guys were frustrated and upset and angry, and that doesn't help, right? That leads to decreased performance, not increased.
And you mentioned how things can be for a successful team. The value of confidence is also a part of something here too, where you mentioned if things aren't going your way immediately, then everything's wrong, the world is crap, and you're kind of harumphing your way through that situation, and you're having to push, I think, that much further into your confidence to turn things around instead of just understanding that do your thing, stay in control, and things will work themselves out, especially if you are a superior individual than your opposition. And I think that it's an interesting juxtaposition where it's the value of confidence versus self-value and self-worth, and trying to fight that internal battle over 90 minutes every time out.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where some experience helps out, right? And that's why experience is important, because you learn how to deal with those moments, not only individually, how you feel inside yourself, right? But the team environment and how the team reacts, and how you guys either lift each other up or bring each other down through body language and performance right after goals given up. So yeah, that's the confidence is huge. It's the biggest thing that we talk about with kids, for sure. It's the most important aspect of any player in any sport at any level. It's more important than the skills or um, anything, knowledge, right? You can have all that stuff. If you got no confidence, you're not going to be a good player.
When it comes to the postseason specifically, I think that a lot of this ramps up as we watch what's going on with MLS as we're chasing after MLS Cup. And one of the other aspects about all of this, I think that we get to see, and I don't think necessarily computes with those of us who watch versus those of you who play is that the levels of being uncomfortable increase, I would say, exponentially because of what is on the line at the end of the day. It's either you win and continue, or you don't win and you're gone, and you're figuring out what you're going to do for Thanksgiving and figure out what your Christmas presents are. The idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable when it comes to a postseason. What is that like, and how are those conversations with younger people and younger players, especially in games where you're being told everything matters? This is your future at hand. The idea of comfortable about being uncomfortable, that's got to be a delicate thing.
For sure, because when you get into these games where it's a one-off, right? There's a fine line between being patient and having that sense of urgency, and because this is one game, and like you said, your season's over if it doesn't go well, and that's why experience in these moments matters a lot, and that's why teams that are in the playoffs for the first time, I would never choose a team that, like Austin this year. They've had a very good season, but I'll be shocked if they make a deep run in the playoffs, because it's very tough to do when you don't have experience as a group, right? Even us, Atlanta United, that's why making the playoffs year one was so important, because it gave us the experience that we needed going into year two. So yeah, it's challenging because you want to try and play it like any other game, because you want to bring your best performance and your confidence. And like we talked about earlier, right? You're playing your best when you're loose and you're having fun and you're enjoying it. But the higher the stakes, the tougher it is to play like that.
So then let me carry on that thought to the opposite. If you have no experience in these situations and you're in there like an Austin, from your perspective, is there any value with not having experience in a pressure situation, basically going out there and saying, yeah, we're going to do our thing, whatever happens, happens? I know that's probably a very rare thought, and you're kind of leaning toward having more and more pressure heaped upon you. But what about the notion of it being 180 degrees from that, where it's like, yeah, we've never done this. Fine, we're going to go out there, we're going to do our thing, and whatever happens, happens.
Definitely. And as you're saying that, I think that's what we're hoping for our national team, right? I mean, we've got a very, very young national team, the youngest national team in the World Cup. And these guys don't have experience at Olympics, at a World Cup, right? That's why missing these Olympics has been a disaster for U.S. soccer. Of course, they play in some big games with their club teams, but it's different when you're representing your country. It's even a bigger step up in terms of pressure. And so I think the same thing for the national team. We hope that there's a youthfulness where they don't even understand the moment, maybe, or don't care. And in those situations, I'd say it can work if things go very good from the beginning, right? If you go out there and you have a good start to the game and you get a goal, like, you can build on that momentum. It's when things go poorly in a game where you can't wait until after the game to make adjustments. You need to make adjustments right away. That you need to have that experience, and they have it in coaching staff, and I'm talking about Austin now. They've got some experienced players on the field, and that's when you lean on those experienced players even more to try and settle the team down and get rid of the nerves, if there are any, as best you can.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Alex Ring, who's with the time that a lot of Atlanta United folks remember him at NYC, and what he's been able to do. Those kind of veteran voices in these unique situations, in these new situations, definitely can help you out. When it comes to another topic that we had with Greg last week was leveling down mental toughness, and the idea when you look at things, are younger players today tuned in differently than, say, we were? And it goes back to the conversation that we were having, like when we're growing up. I'll share the same story with you that I did with Greg, where I was playing Little League Baseball. I was playing first base. And so this was obviously back in like the 1790s when this happened. So I'm playing first base, and I'm, it's in between pitches, and the pitcher's doing his thing on the mound, and so I'm kind of cleaning up the area in front of first base, not really looking up, and I'm just kind of doing some housekeeping and some gardening. And the pitcher throws the ball toward first without me looking, and it goes over my head, goes down the fence, goes down the right field foul line. Guy makes his way all the way to third. My manager at the time said, and I quote, "It'll be a cold day in hell before you play first base ever again." And so I spent the remainder of that season out in right field, just kind of, once again doing gardening and picking, 3 and 4 leaf clovers, because, no one was going to hit the ball to right field in Little League. When you have those kinds of moments when you're growing up, when we were growing up, how are folks today when it comes to those kinds of messages? Do we still see folks giving those messages as adults to kids? Has that turned itself down a little bit in the volume? How are you seeing those kinds of messages today?
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. It really comes down to individuals. I think we as a society probably have we're not on top of the kids as much as probably you were back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
I think that coaches and parents were probably a little bit harder on their kids in some aspects.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was all good. I'm not saying, hey, that was the good way and what we're doing today is the bad way. But that goes like to the participation trophy era, and the fine line between, trying to coach and instill values, but be a positive influence rather than always, putting kids down and teaching lessons that way. Because I do think that, kids these days are a little bit more fragile, and I don't mean fragile in a bad way. I think they're more in tune to their feelings, and the last thing that we want to do as coaches and as parents is kill the love, right? And that could have killed the love for you of baseball, right? It might have.
The
right?
strike of 93 actually did, but
So of course, the greatest thing about youth sports is teaching kids values that they can take on for life, right?
Yeah.
It's not winning and losing games. It's not developing pro athletes. It's developing skills that will help them, throughout their entire life. And that's, I think, what's lost. And I think that can be done through positive criticism. And I think that's different from kid to kid. And that's what I talk about with leadership within teams. As a leader of Atlanta United, like, I could motivate one guy differently than another guy, right? There's some guys you have to have conversations with on their side. Yep. And there's other guys you can yell at right in front of the entire team. And they're going to be like, you're right. Like, I got to get better. Right. And there's other guys that are going to be like, no, F you. And then, totally get away from you. And it's the same thing with kids and coaches and trying to walk that line and figure out what ticks each kid. But I will say that kids are resilient, man. They are. So it's been fun. It's been fun to see the differences between kids and age groups and how to help each individual.
Okay. I know that we're up against your time. Do you want to take an Atlanta United question really quickly before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Emilio, he says, regarding how Atlanta United finished, how does a player reconcile in their mind team injuries taking the team down versus them possibly thinking they failed to take advantage of an opportunity to showcase their talents with additional playing time given?
Sorry, I need to read that again because it was a lot. Okay. I see it here on the side regarding how does the player reconcile in their mind team injuries taking the team members versus them possibly. I think that, the injuries that Atlanta United faced was, I've never seen it before.
No.
Incredible. And it was right up the spine of the team, right? You think Brad, Ozzy, and Miles, and those are the most critical positions as far as leadership, keeping a team together, and grinding through tough periods. Yeah. So absolutely, it affected the team, and I get that. On the flip side, yes, every injury is an opportunity for somebody else to maybe get their career going, to showcase themselves. We probably didn't have enough guys take advantage of that opportunity. And when we look at Atlanta United and we think, the amount of money that we've spent as a organization on the team, like we should be able to overcome those things and maybe at least score goals, because the injuries were more towards the middle to back end. So I think that's where the disappointment for me comes from, is like not being exciting enough up front and scoring goals, even though, yeah. And so for me, that's where it is. But absolutely, I think that, through injuries definitely comes opportunities. We wouldn't have gotten Parata. Yeah. We wouldn't have got him probably if Miles stays healthy all year. And I think he's a good signing. So that's a good opportunity for the club, or it's a good opportunity for him. I think he came in and did well. Right? I don't think that we can say the same for the defensive mid position. It was kind of a rotating door all year. I don't think guys took real advantage of that opportunity. So, it's definitely case to case, but those injuries, they hurt a lot. And it's not that we want to make excuses. It's the fact.
Yep. 20 injuries among a 37 player roster in this season. And some players were injured more than once. And so I think it was 17 players, 20 injuries on a 37 players that played this season for Atlanta United. You have continued, as always, to open up more doors for more conversations. When you come back and visit next time, it's about positive criticism, and we'll get into that. And obviously, making sure that where you can use the gas and where you can use the brake with specific players, and knowing how to sit there and gauge them and know what works. Time for the plug. What's going on with Beyond Goals and with you these days?
Just got back from Atlanta. Was down there for a few days, and we worked with Atlanta United Academy, 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, all the age groups there. So that was great. It was awesome. Checked in at Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta. Went to 2 different clubs there and visited with them and talked to the kids there. So it was a busy 3 days, but it was fun. I enjoyed it.
And we will hopefully see you coming back here very, very soon with more stuff. And I know that we will see you coming back here as you and Greg tag out. So we'll see you here in a couple weeks. As always, MF Parkhurst on the Twitters at BG Mentoring. Thanks again, as always, Cap. Great to see you and catch up on a variety of topics every single time out. Thanks for hanging out.
Absolutely. Enjoy the playoffs, soccer and baseball.